Thank you so much for joining us today. Hello, everyone. We are thrilled to welcome to our webinar, which will last for about an hour. My name is Yerkin Abdurrahim, and I'll be your host for this session. I am not alone today. I'll be hosting this webinar with my amazing colleagues who are working behind the scenes to ensure everything runs smoothly. I'd like to also introduce my colleague Nadra Kushpakova from Uzbekistan, who will be moderating the chat box throughout the session. Nadra will also be facilitating Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So please keep your questions coming as we go along. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder to keep your microphones muted unless invited to speak, and feel free to use the chat to engage and connect with others. Now it's time to introduce our esteemed speaker. Nancy Lindberg. Nancy Lindberg is a second-year English language fellow currently based in Almaty, Kazakhstan, supporting future English teachers at the Kazakh National Women's Teacher Training University and in-service teachers in Almaty city schools. She previously served at Ahmet Yasavi International Kazakh Turkish University in Turkestan. Welcome, Mrs. Lindberg.
Thank you for
The
having
floor
me.
is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you. For me to screen share, shall I just go ahead and share my presentation?
Yeah, now you can.
Okay.
Yes, now I'm allowing you to share the screen. Please.
Okay. Let's see. One moment, please. Okay. Can you see the presentation all right?
Yes, now it's clear. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. Whoops. Sorry, it's moving at its own speed. So thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Jurgen. As you may have guessed, since I was in Turkestan last year, I had the privilege to work together with Jurgen and with his access students. So it was a wonderful year there. This year I've been based in Almaty, as Jurgen said in the introduction, and it's been such a privilege here to be working with the university and also with city school teachers and with access students here as well. So today's presentation is about using tabletop board games in the language classrooms. And I'm sure that many of you already do this. So some of this will be a reminder and sort of a reflection time. So I am here as an English language fellow. And for those of you who are not familiar with English language fellow program, it is a program sponsored by the U.S. Department of State. And it sends English language teachers throughout the world to work with educational institutions and other programs. So it has been just such a privilege to be here for 2 years, along with other fellows in Kazakhstan. Fellows have been placed in many other cities. This year, there are 4 different fellows in Kazakhstan. So I'm from a very small state in northern United States. My state is Vermont, and it's very near the border of Canada. Alrighty. So in the workshop today, we're going to talk about some of the objectives are what is communicative language teaching? What is student-centered learning? How do students learn through board games? This is an example of a communicative language teaching methodology and student-centered learning. And how can we incorporate them into the classroom? And then I have a challenge for you all, and that is making your own board games, not within this session, but hopefully either in preparation for a class or with your students. I will also share with you a resource for ready to use and downloadable board games.
Did you do it in your phone or by laptop?
Okay, very good. Okay, so as a warm-up, you can write this in the chat if you'd like. Think about, what do you do in your classroom on a typical day? What skills do you emphasize? What are your students doing? And what is the teacher doing? So feel free to put some ideas in.
Yeah, dear colleagues, please feel free to answer these questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hands. You can speak up. Please unmute yourself and you can speak, please.
Okay, someone said we mostly focus on speaking in class. Great. Anybody else have a comment to share?
Of course, we mainly focus on 4 skills that is mainly emphasized: writing, reading, listening, yeah, and reading. Of course,
Wonderful.
speaking as well.
Thank you, Idris. And it looks like Zarina also
Yeah.
said she prepares speaking cards. Great idea. Okay, we'll move on. And as we go through the rest of this workshop, think about that question a little bit. And this is also maybe a take-home question after you think about what we talk about in this workshop. Okay, so as was mentioned by our participant Idris, our language learning goals do include those 4 skills, and that's often what we focus on in the classroom: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Those skills, however, make up a larger, meaningful purpose of language learning, which is communication. So we're hoping that our students will put together those skills in some fashion and be able to communicate, whether it's through whether it's through writing or speech, finding a way to communicate. And communicate means sharing information in some format. All right. So to have a shared definition of communicative language teaching, I suggest here one of the commonly understood definitions of communicative language teaching is it's focused on students learning through meaningful communication. So meaningful communication might be different than some of the speaking drills we might have in class. We may have students follow a script, or we may have students just do some exercises, reading sentences, filling in gaps, that kind of thing. So what we want to try to work towards is having them talk about something meaningful to them, exchanging information that is just not sort of rote information. So those communicative activities can include games. The games, one of the important things about a game, any kind of game really, is its interaction. It's people interacting with each other. So it is communicative. But in the board games that I'm going to share with you today, it's interaction in the target language. And the students very often, in my experience using these board games, are able to remain in the target language. The vocabulary and grammar that sometimes we as teachers find ourselves focusing a lot of time in class on just automatically get woven into playing of the game. And so they become fun. Let's see. Okay. So if we can reflect for a moment on what kinds of games, does anybody have an idea? Feel free to just speak up. That's probably the easiest way. Any kind of games.
Yeah, please.
An
Dear
example for.
participants, you can share what kind of games do you use in your classroom? Well, of course, you can raise your hands and speak up. Let me answer this question. I usually play games, online games like Kahoot, Quizlet, and quizzes, to prepare to consolidate the lesson, to revive the
Okay.
material we have previously covered.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that example, Jurgen, of online games like Kahoot and Quizlet. I definitely have seen a lot of those games being used in the different classes that I have observed here, and they definitely have their place in classrooms and can be very effective. So comparing that type of game with a board game, and notice the spelling is B-O-A-R-D and not B-O-R-E-D. What is a board game? And I'll go ahead and give you the answer so that we can move on. I know that we do have limited time today, and I want to make sure we can talk about all these different things. So a board game is not boring. It is not boring, definitely not spelled that way. So a board game is one that is not, certainly the kind of board game I'm talking about today, it is not screen-based. So it's different than a Kahoot or a Quizlet. It's something that is material-based. It could be on a piece of paper, it could be on a piece of cardboard, and it's in front of the student, so it becomes the center of focus and the center of attention. If you think to the classroom when we do use a Kahoot or a Quizlet, often that involves screens. It might be not only the screen in front of the room where the students are seeing sort of the collaborative ideas, but it's also involving maybe their phones in front of them for them to input their own ideas, or sometimes not. Sometimes it's verbally they're inputting it. But it does usually involve some screens. So these board games are not screen-based, no technology at all. And the focus is these are best played in small groups of students. So that is also a little bit different than a Quizlet or a Kahoot, which often we might be able to play with the entire class and everybody puts in their information and contributes to. Again, those also have a great place in the classroom. But I'm suggesting these as an alternative for when we want to have the students dive deeper into some communicative time and to do that interaction in small groups. So these games are focused on the interaction and communication and not on the right or wrong answers. Sometimes with the screen-based games, we do find it's about getting the answer right or getting the answer, sort of testing our knowledge, which is also an important thing to do depending on the topic that we're learning. But in this case, we're trying to use games to facilitate that output, to facilitate students really communicating with each other. All right. Here's an example, of course, of a very common board game, which is checkers. This is not necessarily a very talkative, communicative board game, but it is sort of a very popular, well-known one, as is chess. Okay, so the board games I'm going to introduce today, this is a free source of board games from americanenglish.state.gov. They're called Activate board games. And I have a printed version of them. Maybe some of you also have a printed version of them, or maybe you have seen it. Consulates and U.S. embassies do sometimes give these out. So be on the lookout if you're ever at a conference and if these are being given out. However, you can download them and print them out totally for free. So it's not necessary to have this set to be able to use these games. So when you go to this site, at americanenglish.state.gov, this is just a quick look at the index of the games that you will find. So the games, and I have a set here that's printed out, are a piece like this. And so it's basically the size of two 8.5, 11 papers. It's like two pieces of paper put together and folded in half. So you could go to the printer and have these printed out. As you can see, these from the titles of these games are designed so that the students, they're very open-ended questions, so the students can participate in playing the games without being right or wrong, but just by using the language and their own ideas. So I have a few of the samples of the board games on the screen here. So as you can see on Name Your Favorite, I think it's pretty self-evident what we're going to do in that game. Students are going to name their favorite, whatever thing it is that they land on. With a game, you move through the places on the game board like a person moves along a sidewalk or a path or a road. So it's like a little road. And as you see on this one, there's a start on the lower left in the yellow, and there's a finish on the upper right, and you follow the arrows. Now, this is facilitated by using a game dice, or you can also use an electronic dice. I usually prefer in order to keep the telephones completely off the tables. It just makes it totally tech free. But with teachers, I sometimes use the ones on the phones to keep it easy. So if someone rolls a 3, for instance, you'd go 1, 2, 3, starting at the beginning, and name your favorite cold drink. My favorite cold drink is water. So you can see with that answer that a student might say water, or a student might say, my favorite cold drink is water, or I love water with ice cubes, or I love Coca-Cola, but my mom doesn't let me drink Coca-Cola. The student can differentiate and extend their answers based on their own understanding of the question, their own comfort, their own abilities. And as they move through the board, hopefully they're going to feel more and more comfortable extending their answers. Also, because each student is following one another, and I suggest about between 2 to 4, or even 2 to 6 players per game, but not too many per game. And that way they'll have more talk time. So as the next player goes, if they land on the same square, it's okay because they may have a different answer. And when they land on different squares, that is also helping to create a model of how to frame those sentence answers. My favorite hot drink is, my favorite dessert is, my favorite music is. And so students, even those who are listening to the person speaking, are developing an awareness of how to frame their answer when it comes to be their turn. You can see in the middle one, and you can see also how that's very student-centered because everybody has different favorite things. So it gives them an idea, a way for them to express what they like and their friends to learn about what they like. You can see in the middle one, it's set up a little differently where it's giving a prompt, a sentence prompt. So I think school is, so it's giving you part of the sentence and then the students can finish it. I think school is fun. I think school is challenging. They can use whatever word or words they want, and they can, again, make even a paragraph out of that sentence prompt if they're feeling that they have a lot to say about. I know how to ride a bicycle. My dad taught me how to do it last year. I have a pink bicycle. So lots of ways that these are really help to get the communication going. Now, during all of this, of course, the teacher can start to be moving around the room, facilitating this, and start to listen in and also help students extend their statements, or just be sure that everyone's having a good time and participating.
What?
Alrighty. Here's a couple of more examples of the games that are in those packets. Would you rather and why? So in this case, in this game, would you rather, it is giving students a common collocation and having them use it and also giving them a choice. So it's still very student-centered. Would you rather have a bird, a monkey, or a cat as a pet? I would rather have a bird. And it's helping students think about things critically that they maybe have never thought about before. I know I have never thought about whether I would rather have a bird, a monkey, or a cat as a pet. I think maybe a bird and a monkey never crossed my mind. But now that I've read the question, maybe I'll think about that. In this one over on the right, use a word. This is pretty simple. As far as what the student can do, they have to just create a sentence. But sometimes the simpler ones are actually the harder ones because they don't have any structure there about how to create that sentence. They have to sort of think about it. And this again is where, as the teacher is circling around, they might be able to help the student with some sentence frames. Okay. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of moving here to figure out where to go next. Okay. So, um, I wanted to just spend a minute or two on how this hands-on interactive learning using board games, what the pedagogy is behind it, and how this is helpful in our classrooms. I know that right now there is a lot of emphasis placed on artificial intelligence, placed on technology. It's certainly what we are all facing as teachers and embracing, of course, as teachers as well. There's so much fantastic, so many fantastic tools that brings to us. However, it's also great to continue to embrace methods that don't involve technology. With these interactive games, you notice students will be moving pieces around the board. They're using a dice, they're thinking, they're talking, they're looking, they're listening to their friends. And all of these together is using their multiple intelligences. They're visual, they're listening, they're manipulating things. So this is really an important way that the brain retains learning and puts it together. And there's more information on the web about multiple intelligences, certainly not my idea. It's just also, it brings a lot of different ways to use your brain. It's not just thinking about words, it's working with ideas, working with pictures and illustrations, working with graphics and lots of other things. So students are being critical thinkers and they're also being creative. The example, for instance, of the bird, monkey, or cat pet, that's a pretty creative question, right? We're thinking in new ways there. And all of these particular games are connecting those ideas with oneself. So it's very meaningful. And this is really the heart of communicative language teaching is we want students to be talking about something that has meaning, because when you're talking about something that has meaning, it makes you feel confident, like, wow, I communicated something that I really care about, something that I like. And then that's going to inspire your students to want to keep learning and want to keep doing fun stuff in class and keep using English. Another great thing about these games is because you're going around a board on a path and you're hearing the other students repeat the same or similar questions, you're having multiple encounters with the same content. And we know that multiple encounters with something helps the students retain it and acquire it. And as we have seen, it's automatically differentiated. So that student can say, my favorite drink is water, my favorite drink is ice water, my favorite drink is water, but I really would rather drink Coca-Cola. They can differentiate it to their level, and that's fine. And it won't feel to the students who answered simply like, oh, wow, I can't say it that way, because they're communicating. And it really also helps with another important thing in all of our learning, which is developing turn-taking skills. And turn-taking skills are something that we need not only as students, but we need them as adults in our future work and family lives. So now to the challenge part that I mentioned before, and that is making your own games. These games, as I said, you can download, they're ready to use, really literally no prep time, and other than printing them out if you don't have a kit. But you can also make your own games to align with whatever goals and objectives that you are focused on in your class, in the unit that you're working on, so that you can really align them with that. And I know that that's important. You have a particular curriculum to follow that your schools are giving you or that your program is giving you, and you want to make sure that you are on point with that. But this would be a really fun way to augment that curriculum, and it would be totally within bounds. Now, on the back of these boards are some ideas about like how to lay out a game, just sort of templates. I'm sure you can find lots of other templates online, maybe circles, maybe squares, etc. So, you can make the game yourself as a teacher to try to have your students start to incorporate the vocabulary or grammar that you've been working on, such as we saw in the example of would you rather. Or you can have your students, especially if you work with students who are more advanced, teenage students in high school, or in university, you can have them make these games as a project. The one on screen here is a project that a couple of my students worked on together. And they created their own idea. It's got teleportation in it and all sorts of fun and cool stuff. And students are very creative. They're going to come up with so many really cool ideas. I suggest that you have your students make these by hand and actually have it be a project in class rather than say, hey, go home and do this, and then they all come back with an AI created project. Have them do it in class using their own brains, their own hands, and extend off of the learning that you have already been working on in your class. Of course, you're there to help facilitate that and so that they can stay focused. After they create their games as a project, then they can all demonstrate and play their games together. This is a super fun and engaging activity to do, and I hope that you will give it a try. Let's see, so to do this, a couple of tips so that you can do this, and that is have a theme. If you just say, hey, students, create a theme or create a game, or if you yourself say, hey, I'm just going to create a game, that's a pretty too broad an idea. So have a theme, something general, specific, something in line with the units you're teaching, or maybe something in line with the vocabulary you're working on, or maybe something in line with something else that's going on, the season of the year, something. And then your students can respond to situations or questions. Make them open-ended so that it's going to be student-centered and students have a choice to explain their answer or just really be original and unique with their answer, rather than a question that is closed-ended that only has one answer, like, what's the capital of Kazakhstan? That has one answer, right? Rather than, why do countries have capitals? That's an open-ended question. All right. So here's an example of a game that I made with students for the students to practice on the theme of healthy eating and wellness after they had done a unit exploring that content. So this was the outcome activity. Students can get to the outcome activity after they have content knowledge of whatever they're going to be talking about. So if your students are going to do this, you can help them design the questions, or if you're doing it, you can design the questions and they can be right on the board, as we saw in some of these examples where the question is right on the board. You don't need anything but the board and a dice. Or you can incorporate game cards where if they land on a certain color, say, they choose a game card of that same color and ask whatever the question is. So different ways to design it, depending on your choice and your student's choice. As we talked about in the beginning, it's important that there's a start and a finish to the game. A couple of reasons to this: it keeps it organized, it gives some sense of organization, it helps with the turn taking. It also means that it's not going to go on forever and ever. So once someone reaches the finish line, you can say, great, we've done our game for today, and you can move on with other things. Add creative elements, rather than just have black and white squares with questions. That feels a little bit too much like a test or a worksheet. Keep it, make it visually stimulating. Doesn't take too much to have a few magic markers, some pictures and stuff like that on it. So that okay. It's important that they have a way to move around the board. It can be the dice, or it can also be a spinner. They'll need little game pieces to move around the board. In this picture, there's a little car, a little vehicle that they have to move around this board. I often use cardboards. You can use coins, you can use paper clips. It can be anything, but you want each game piece to be distinctive so that each student has their own. And then, do you want to incorporate instruction cards or have all the instructions right on the board? Have your game have some kind of a clever name or a meaningful name. For instance, this one is called What Someone Does. So it's related to the content of the game, or sometimes it's the Right. All right. So next tip is games. Sometimes we think are about winning, but actually games are all about playing. It's about having fun and interacting and talking. It's not about winning. So keep it friendly and encourage that among the students rather than, oh, I won, I won. It's more about like just keep it going. All right. So to conclude my introduction to board games in the classroom, the thoughts I really want to make sure that you take away from this short presentation are, despite the fact that technology is here and that artificial intelligence is here and that we spend a lot of our time getting great information and great support from that, don't forget to continue to embrace board games because they provide a very interactive way to get your students actually talking and staying in target language. Board games encourage small group play, so keep your groups small, not too large, to get the students talking as much as possible. Keep it communication focused rather than winning focused. And students will stay in the target language, believe it or not, throughout this board game. I think you'll find that it's a very great way to keep your students on target and in the language. And then as that challenge piece, give it a try. Try to create your own board games related to your theme of your class, or for those of you who have classes with students who are a bit more advanced, encourage this as project-based learning and have your students create some board games of their own. If we have a few more minutes, I would love to hear any ideas that you might have about a board game that you think your students, for those of you who have more advanced students, might be able to create related to a theme that you're working on, or a board game you might like to create for students on their behalf that will relate to one of your themes. And I'm going to stop sharing. These are the references, and you probably saw on the slides earlier, but if you didn't catch it, the very last reference is the URL for Activate Board Games on americanenglish.state.gov. So please check that out and download those, totally free to do so. Okay. There we go.
That was
Great to see
great.
so many people
Yes.
here.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of takeaways from this webinar. Yeah, and there is a great task for you, dear participants, to make a board game, to create your own board game according to the instructions given by our presenter, Mrs. Lindberg. So yeah, now it's time for Q&A session. Nadra, are you here?
Yes,
Yes, please.
thank you. So I'm going to read the comments at the beginning of the webinar. They sent, they commented, and Zarina Mirza said board games are really good for low resource classroom. And Saltanat Abdubalieva said that I don't know how it's exactly called, but I use find three things or speak for 1 minute posters that played with dice. And Saltanat Abdubalieva said that, yes, I like cooperative learning. And Anna Boliu said that a city tower like a quest. And Aygul Kaizan said that board games help learners to communicate and collaborate with each other. And Mary said, thank you. Aygul Kaizan said that learners learn by playing. Thanks a lot for sharing, Miss Linda. Kasti said that I remember Access in Pavlodar created Poly based on the Monopoly. It's motivating since it relates to realia of students. Sorry. Brisna said that thanks a lot, and Mary said that my students really love to practice learned vocabulary using board games. And Mira said thanks, and Sagandikova said that thanks a lot. And Kasti also commented that she wanted the thanks to Nancy. Board games are very essential for interactive, engaging teaching, and board games are of repetitive features, and students learn some chunks in a creative way. Thank you.
Great, thank
Thanks
you.
for all your
Thank you,
great
Nadra.
comments.
Yes, a lot of comments in the chat box. Yes, and dear participants, there was a question from Mrs. Lindberg. I would like to paraphrase it. Have you ever used the board games? How was your experience using these board games? You can raise your hands, dear participants, and speak up.
Mary.
Yes, Mireille, please.
So good evening, dear participants, dear hosts.
Just works
Thank
with
you.
many.
So can you hear me well?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for having this kind of seminar. It is very useful information about the board games, and I want to share my own experience about using them. So thanks to Access program, we had a lot of board games, and we still practice them with my students. And having learned them, we use the project-based learning approach that I give them the task to create the board game themselves, to practice and to remember, revise all the learned vocabulary. So in the beginning of each lesson, like a warm-up, we can use the board game, and they really love. And when we divide the group like in the small groups, like for 3 or 4 children, they can manage all the process themselves, like check if they use the foreign language, not their mother tongue, if somebody is cheating or not. And also when they create the board game themselves, it is like a creative work. They try to use different platforms. They love Canva, for example, as my students, and it is like they are revising the vocabulary at home, and it is really good, very essential practice. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mireille, for sharing your thoughts. Any volunteers? Would you like to share your experience? Please raise your hands. Nadra, do we have something in the chat box?
So far,
Anna wants to share her thought. Please, Anna, you are welcome.
Hi, good to hear everyone. Good to see you, Nancy, again. So good to have opportunities to meet like this. So yeah, we're actually contemplating within our summer intensive sessions or camp, what I want to call it. We're actually contemplating doing a map for the quest to do some outdoor activity. And that will be based on the vocabulary, on feelings and emotions that we actually took before. And I am a huge proponent of Activate games, like Nancy mentioned them, and we mentioned them also in the chat. And they're also easy to model like after. So basically, you don't have to break your head. You can actually use, and they do use open-ended questions, triggering associations of students. Like for example, what animal would you like want to be, and then or why this or that is different. Like you have 3 animals to choose from. All of them are different, obviously, but students can easily find something similar or opposite. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anna, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank
Yeah. Any questions in the chat box, Nadra?
I guess the main one will be how to get a copy. We're always hungry for the copies of the presentations, as usual.
Okay.
or will they be available on the British Council website? Or the recording?
Yeah, recording there. There will be recording, Anna. There will be recording on our Facebook page. Nadra, have you shared our Facebook page?
Yes, I have
Great.
already shared
Dear
Facebook
dear
page,
participants,
YouTube
you can
channel.
follow our Facebook page, and you will find a lot of information there about upcoming webinars as well. Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat box, Nadra?
So far, not.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Lindberg. You know, every time when we see you,
I'm
we are
sorry.
very happy.
Yes.
Yeah, we are very
Gulistan
happy.
said, can I share?
Sorry, Nadra?
Gulistan said that, can I share my opinion?
Okay, please, Gulistan, please.
Unmute yourself and
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Linda, for productive presentation.
Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy. Nancy. I'm really happy to have you today. Actually, and I just use board game, and it is interesting. And just board game creates a space and for our students and to share their opinions, and also it levels up just the students' creative thinking, critical thinking, and also problem-solving skills. I really like, and my students also really like, and this, how to say, this approach, we can say, and in future, and we will just implement all the approaches, all the activities, and you have shared today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are welcome, Gulistan. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. You are welcome.
we have a question.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I
Tatiana
haven't
Andreevna,
found the
please.
sign, of the question. Nancy, have you observed, and whoever of you, teachers and their colleagues, that students are reluctant to play these board games? Well, and probably most of us observe they are so happy and motivated to play Kahoot and to do everything with their mobile phone. They are so excited. But when you suggest them doing or offer them doing something with the board game, they feel a bit not ashamed, but demotivated, less interested. So since they go back to some paperwork, something. So do you have any wow effect for them to motivate and to encourage them? Well,
Yeah.
any
So
tip?
I actually have not observed that. I mean, I could see why that potentially could be a concern, or maybe a perception that might happen. But I really observed the opposite, that the students forget about their mobiles, especially if you make it a time where their mobiles are not in front of them. That's why I say don't use the mobile dice roller, use actual dice. Um, so I found that students are just totally engrossed in what's happening, especially because if the questions are open-ended and it's about them sharing their own stuff about themselves, their own opinions about things they like to do or who they are or etc. Students like to talk about themselves, and they listen to each other. They comment on each other, they laugh, they extend each other's conversations. So I have not found that students find it demotivating. I think even students recognize that they need time, some downtime from technology. Students know that they're very, very attached to technology, especially those, especially if you ask a university student to self-reflect, or even a high school student, if they self-reflect, they know that they are overusing technology. So I think they appreciate downtime. One example, I mean, students love to be active. They love to go outdoors and play football or do things that are just, good old-fashioned exercise. And I think the same is true with board games. Students like that time to just naturally interact and not have something in between them, like have this third party in the conversation. So give it a try. And when you give it a try, probably the best results will be just have it for a time when, hey, students, let's put our phones in our bags. We're going to play board games and see how it goes.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
girl.
you for
Actually,
the
I'm fan of the board games, and I try to use them as at mostly every lesson. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, hopefully, it would work well for some other time as well.
Thanks for the question, Tatiana Abigamna. Thanks for the response, Mrs. Lindberg. Okay, our time is restricted. Dear participants, if you have any questions, please follow our Facebook page, and you can address your questions to our presenter under the video. We are going to upload on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Mrs. Lindberg. We are always happy to see you. Everywhere we meet you, you are doing great job. Thank you so much. You've done a great job today by presenting this, I would say, such an important topic like games and like fun, something fun we can bring into our classroom. So let me make some announcements. You can stay till the end, Mrs. Lindberg, with us. You can be with us.
Thank you.
Okay, dear participants, today I'm going to make some announcements. We are going to wrap up the month and our academic year with a guest expert webinar with Abdulkhalik Saburov from Tajikistan. He's going to present on the topic of empowering English language educators with AI tools. Please join us on June 27th at 7 p.m. Tashkent time. And we are going to organize the first ever mini conference. The first one is going to be mini on Zoom, and we are going to invite all the teachers from Central Asia to participate at the conference that is going to be on August 11th at 9 a.m. Tashkent time. Please stay tuned. And if you want to apply for these segments, you can, Nadra, our moderator today, has already shared these segments, the links to these segments. And you can see the links, the screenshots, please. You can screen the QR code and follow our Facebook page, YouTube channel. And if you are an open alumni, you can join our WhatsApp group. That's it for today. Again, thank you so much, Mrs. Lindberg, for presenting for our Open Central Asia Regional Interest Community. It's a part of our main open community of practice. If you are familiar, if you are not familiar with this community of practice, if you have the open alumni, those who have completed the global open courses will automatically become the member of an open community of practice. Thank you so much, dear participants. Thanks for joining. See you next time.